For the first time since Battlefield 2, I am excited about the new Battlefield. Yes, I'm sad there isn't a single player campaign, especially since Battlefield 1's had some of the best and most memorable segments that I've played in recent years. But I'd trade a good single player campaign in an instant for bot support in the multiplayer. Which is exactly what Battlefield 6 has done. Or Battlefield 2042 or whatever. Because let's be honest, the Battlefield series has never been about the single player campaign. Since the very beginning of the series, it's been about the large, open, dynamic battlefields. It's what drew me to the series in the first place. I played that demo level in the desert countless times, capturing bunkers, hiding behind sandbags, trying to destroy tanks with grenades, and so on. I loved Battlefield 1942, which came out in an era when multiplayer gaming was a niche, and when single player was king. This game was one of the first to do large-scale multiplayer seriously. But there was only so much you could do on a 56k connection, and the concept of playing with and against real players was daunting. But that was fine by me, I preferred playing against bots anyway. That game let me tailor the numbers, the skill, and the battlefield to my liking, and I've lost count of the number of hours I've enjoyed on that game. It's funny that my two favourite games of 2002 were this and Unreal Tournament 2003, which were both primarily multiplayer games, which I enjoyed playing in single player. Battlefield 2 came along and I excitedly bought that one with the intention of doing the same thing. But I remember only playing it for a few weeks because the bot support was much more limited. You were restricted to smaller map sizes, to fewer bots. It was clear that in this game, bot support was an afterthought and it lacked the scale and support of the first game. I am still bitter about that. I marvelled at that game's graphics and physics and saw it as such a missed opportunity. All it would have taken was a bit more time from the developers and that game would have become a timeless classic in the eyes of players such as myself. There was a third-party mod that I tried that enabled larger scale combat with bots, but it almost always crashed for me. It wasn't the same as properly supported bots, and anybody who claims it was either didn't try it or didn't care. And since then the support has only got worse, and I was pushed out of the series. I commend them for trying to cater for single player mode in other ways since, but tacking a single player campaign on the side just comes across as an afterthought when the bulk of the game remains multiplayer only. And it's sad when multiplayer games die. The player base moves on and that's it. It's gone forever. You're left with an unplayable game, whereas ones with bot support remain forever playable, for comfort gaming. Bots help to keep games alive, firstly when the player count is dwindling, and then forevermore once it finally reaches 0. So since Battlefield 2, I've satisfied my craving for large-scale combat in other games. Ravenfield is the obvious choice, but right now, Red Orchestra 2 Rising Storm is my current favourite. And it's been the one I've been playing for the last 5 years or so, I kid you not. Sadly, Rising Storm 2, a newer game from the series, does not support bots. Looking on the forums, there are many players who are sad about this, and the response is always the same. About how it's cheating to play against bots, how people only do it to grind the level up, or how it isn't how we're supposed to be playing the game. I'm not sure where this elitist snobbery came from, but I can assure these people that there are players, such as myself, who would rather play the game against bots than against other real players. And we do so because it's fun and not the frustrating, difficult, stressful experience that PvP inevitably becomes. And how dare those people tell us how we're meant to be enjoying the game? It's not like I'm telling them that they should only be playing against bots. So when I say I'm excited about Battlefield 2042's bot support, I mean that as an expert who specialises in playing multiplayer games with as few other real players as possible. Why do I like this? I guess, at its most basic level, I like easy games. I like to win. I like to be the hero. I like to make a meaningful contribution to a large-scale war, and not just to be another player's cannon fodder. I like to be able to hold off a control point against 10 enemies, and that's something you can't exactly do in multiplayer unless you're incredibly good or extremely lucky. Or both. But in single player, you can set up a scenario where you can do exactly that. You can just sit somewhere for hours mowing enemies down with a gun turret. You can sneak behind them and take a control point from the rear, on your own. You can be the hero in your own game. And I can suspend my disbelief. Yes, I know they're just bots, but it still triggers that bit in my brain where I think my contributions to the match are appreciated by the other players. I can live in a fantasy land where I think my efforts are being rewarded, and where the bots actually care about me. And let's be honest, that's less of a fantasy than believing your teammates in multiplayer games appreciate you coming top. And it is nice to have actual multiplayer as well, should I tire of playing against bots, or if I eventually see through the illusion, or if I just wish to challenge myself more, then it is great to have the option to play with and against real players instead. It's just that I haven't ever reached that stage with the games that I play, not even after years of doing so. So yes, I like to play against bots. I like games to provide the gameplay instead of forcing its player base to generate and to maintain it among themselves. And this concept of bot support and why it's so important to me seems alien to a lot of players these days. Some younger players know nothing of single-player games at all. For some people, gaming is about playing with friends and getting beaten over and over again in Battle Royale modes or whatever. Which is fine. If you like that, you go do it. But this is what I like, and I commend the Battlefield series for giving me what I want again. I should have seen this coming. A few years ago they experimented with machine learning and created a bot for Battlefield 1 who learned how to complete the objectives and to shoot the enemies. I don't think this was ever publicly available, but in the video showcasing it you could see that at the time they came with some considerable bugs and limitations. Though they were probably still infinitely better than the ones in Battlefield 1942. So I'm excited to see how convincing the ones in this new game are, to finally have what I want, but from a newer game complete with gorgeous graphics and high levels of polish. I, and a few friends from my LANing days, will be excited to load up a 128 player map and for the 4 of us to hold a checkpoint against as many low skilled bots as possible. We will all board the same plane and perform stunts over the sea, and we won't have anybody on the voice comms shouting at us and calling us noobs for doing so. We will be doing it because we'll be having fun.